Dzień dobry Państwu.
Good evening. I would like to welcome you to the panel entitled, the title you can see on the screen. I had a tricky plan for this conversation, but having a talk with Michnik and Władysław Frasyniuk for 15 minutes, this talk has actually ruined my plan, so I will have to improvise. But I would like to start with an important quotation of President Zelensky, who said, Ukraine has already proved that it's strong, that it is like your country. Now you have to prove that you are true Europeans. Only then life will win over death and the light will win over darkness. So I wanted to start with this quote because it covers all elements that are taking place during the war in Ukraine. Murders. It's incredible. We do not see it, luckily, but we read, we listen to the relations. So the Russian nation is so cruel to the Ukrainian nations, to the neighbors. So they are so close. And now these atrocities take place. I would like to ask you, I'm not going to say to whom this question is addressed, but I wanted to ask you whether in this quote you see this, you can see that the Ukraine has really proved to be that it's strong. Did the Ukraine have to prove this? Because what I found very surprising was the first sentence. Did the Ukraine have to prove anything, especially in these tragic circumstances? Or maybe I will choose the speaker. Mrs. Staniszewska. Ukraine didn't have to prove it to Poland, but it had to prove it to the Western Europe, because Western Europe didn't have trust in Ukraine. I worked for very short time in the European Parliament together with Janusz, Onyszkiewicz, and I heard that Ukraine became separated from Russia only for a while. It was the UK MPs who were saying that, and now they are one of the closest allies of Ukraine. And we were saying who Putin is, what Russia means, and then the Western Ukraine was telling us you have two phobias. So everything you are saying about Putin and Ukraine and about Germany, we must really take away the weight. So we were not believed until Putin didn't stop the gas for Ukraine coming. It was the first moment. So the Western Europe could not believe it. Western Europeans thought that gas is economy. It has nothing to do with politics. It's a different area, different field. So everybody knows that you cannot manipulate with the gas, and then we discovered that Russians can do this. So at the end of our term in the European Parliament, when the Orange Revolution started earlier, and then the situation evolves. Western Europeans started saying, well, let's listen to Poles, let's hear what they want to say, because they are closer, they have a better knowledge. So you shouldn't trust just yourself, you should also listen to new member states to know their perspective. So what we are witnessing now in Ukraine, and we can see that Ukraine is doing very well with this situation, and it's a bigger shock to the west of Western Europe than to us. That's what I think. The second part of this quote states that now you have to prove that you are Europeans. So this is the moment when there is this clash. So we discovered that gas can be a political tool, that Russia is the way it is, and it shows that now it's Europe, not just Poland. Mr. Frasyniuk, he picked up the phone, so let him speak. I will disagree with Grażyna because Polish people say we always saint, we always know what to do, we always all right. He speaks to us. He says, show that you are Europe, show that you are close to us and that you can take us to the EU. Show us that you are a loyal, predictable leader who will take us to the European Union. So, can we guarantee the stable accession of Ukraine to Europe? Isn't Poland delighted with the populism in Europe? I'm not sure, but this government, this government was organizing a big fraction when the war started, probably using funding of Putin. So we have to check. I don't know whether the government, which is now again flirting with Orban, who is hoping for the Italian fraction, who hopefully looks at the Scandinavian changes in their politics. I don't know whether these words are not also addressed to Poland. We can say, yeah, okay, Polish society approved the right society. Even the government has done the good job, although I do not like this government, and hopefully we won't have it for much longer. And I'm deeply convinced what I'm observing in the Polish government is falsehood. Now we need the European solidarity. Maybe now European Union needs Polish ears and eyes, but does this Polish government really represent us? Can they build and integrate the EU? Really? Can these politicians create strong, united Europe? No. In any area, also in our business, it says no to Europe, and they say it's German Europe, so we're not going to work with Europe. So when I'm listening to Zelensky, he is right. He's also talking to Ukrainian society. To be honest, he's like Ukrainian Wałęsa, because it's for the first time we hear this kind of language. We know the war. We know what Russian war looks like. We know how other wars look like. But let's witness the communication used during the war. I can't remember the war where words are more important than missiles. Zelensky's voice, the men who didn't have the US weapons were stronger than the missiles he received with delay. I think what is phenomenal in Ukraine is the way they communicate, how Zelensky talks to his own society and the rest of the world, and I really admire him. But let's not be disillusioned. He is building the civil society. He is searching for friends in the EU, friends who, like our friends who helped us 30 years ago with this process. That's true. That's true. But there is one characteristic information we must not forget in our discussion. He could have left Ukraine very early, but he decided to stay. We know that he was a well-known actor before the war, more popular in Russia than in Ukraine. He had his businesses in Russia, so he stayed in Ukraine. He showed what does it mean to be patriot, what does it mean to be a Ukrainian. So he really gave up a lot of assets. So I think that each word by Zelensky are millions of dollars. So his behaviors, his speeches are to great benefit of the Ukrainian nation. I wanted to add something to what Mr. Frasyniuk has said, how Polish government communicated with Ukraine several years ago. It attempted to propose ultimatum to Ukraine. We will talk to you if you apologize to us for vowing, kneeling in front of us. So there were different systemic solutions at that time. The situation of our relations with Ukraine was very bad. It was because of us. We were unable. Well, not us, because this is not my government, the people who were voting for this. Well, they do not represent me, but the Polish authorities at the time, they were really making the situation with Ukraine very extreme. We had Russia, Ukraine, and Germany, three enemies, and we have to remember this, and we must remember it. Although hopefully Ukrainians will not remember this. I do apologize. I'm calling you Adam. We've been friends for many years, so let's not hide it. Mr. Frasyniuk and Janusz Onyszkiewicz have already said everything about this topic. I do agree with what they have said. But there is a certain dispute with Grażyna. I think that the situation of Morawiecki government is based on a paradox. He is obsessed that in the domestic national policy, he represents Putin's model of the state. It's like plagiarism. He imitates the model. I was taking part in a debate in Moscow with Alexei Navalny, and during the debate said that our leader, at the time it was Kaczyński, not Morawiecki, that Kaczyński said that finally Poland stopped kneeling, it stood up, and everybody was laughing because it was the quote after Putin. So the historical policy harming free media, taking the independence from courts. It's the behavior of Putin's. I agree with Janusz, Grażyna, and Władek said. The politics of this government there are 5 of us on the stage. And I think that this is the worst Polish government after 1985. It harms Poland all the time. It spoils, it poisons Poland. But in relation to Ukraine, it behaved differently than Viktor Orban. So in this context, we must say there is a small consensus. I agree with Mr. Frasyniuk. It's based on falsehood. But if they do something good, even if the motivation is wrong, here they did something good for noble motivations. The general problem is that the proposals by Kaczyński and Morawiecki is the Polish option of Putinism. They want to have the state as Putin has created, stupid people, frightened people. So this is what they are planning for us, what we have seen so far. 2 days ago, what we saw 2 days ago, we saw this imprisonment of the chair of the most important organization of entrepreneurs in Poland. It's a copy of what Putin has done with Chodorkowski, Berezowski, Krusyński. It's exactly the same. So we have to be very careful. We must not believe in any declaration of this government. Janusz is right. This government were anti-Ukrainian, and until today, it remains silent when it's talking about its relations with Ukraine from the times before the war. So if we do not manage to get rid of this government as soon as possible, if we are not successful in changing the government during the next election, soon we will have the same country as Putin's Russia.
Ja jestem głęboko przekonany, że nie musisz absolutnie.
I am convinced you don't have to convince us that we need to change this government as soon as possible. I'm sure that everyone who is here during the Freedom Games, these people came here to listen to you, so I'm sure they agree with you. But this government behaved decently in one occasion. They knew how to behave at the time, but there is a question. Why did they behave like that? Because Polish people were behaving in a specific way without estimating whether it's good or not. So people were taking their private cars, they were going to the border crossing, they were taking food and other donations. So I don't know, maybe the government behaved like that because they had to. It was expected of the society. It was forced by the society. I thought that we would be talking less about Poland and the Polish government. I thought we would be talking more about Ukraine. I think that Polish society reacted like as if just like during the first solidarity movement. So it was identical behavior. Then there was the time that European Union started saying to Poland, you didn't really process your solidarity. You just used it as a bridge. That's why you have a better position and you are in the European Union. But you didn't process it. You forgot about solidarity. So we heard it when that subsequent events happened, when the protests in front of the courts were diminishing, and then we discovered that at this stage of the war, because I would like to say that the war started in 2014, and many Poles and many people have helped Ukraine since 2014, not since February 2022. So, after the 24th of February, it was our DNA, the gene of Polish solidarity, started working, and spontaneously people started deliver aid. The first weekend after the 24th of February, everyone from Poland decided to go to the border crossing to rescue some refugees. So all the border crossings were blocked, and the border guards had to make a special security zone to make sure that the border crossings are patent. So it was incredible. I'm sure that the Polish government, when they saw it, and when they also saw the response of their followers, they reacted the way they reacted, and I'm really happy about this. I'm very happy that there's at least one moment where we can do some things together.
Ja tylko
I just want to express my conviction that we keep on talking about Ukraine and the morality compass, everything related to the war and how Poles behaved is actually what matters, because we talk about Poles but also about Europe. It shows our morality, ethics and solidarity. But we keep on talking about Ukraine, not to mention the fact that in my previous conversation with Władysław, we learned that there is an Ukrainian component in every Pole. Our histories have been intertwined so strongly. One of the national songs, Hey Sokoły, this is the song we keep on singing. I want to say that my grandmother was Ukrainian. In my case, your statement is thus true. However, I want to say that it's not only about Hey Sokoły, but the national anthem of Ukraine was inspired by the Polish national anthem. It was written and composed by somebody living in Galicia and having strong relationships with Poles. There is plenty of it, but coming back to Zelensky, I want to say one thing. We've got a family from Ukraine living in our home, and I got a pen drive with the Nation's Servant show by Zelensky. He acts as a president who is honest but incidentally elected. I find him in this role that was so idealized, but now it's a true role because Zelensky does it in a much larger scale. What Staniszewska did in Warsaw in 1939, he didn't leave Warsaw either. He's like a beacon, like a lighthouse for Ukraine, just like Valencia used to be for us. I'm getting old, and I think that whenever I wake up and hear about the solidarity gene, that it survived, that the Polish civic society was so excellent, that's not true. I don't agree with Janusz. It's our fault, it's my fault that the law and justice rules. Kaczynski didn't buy it in the street market. We made a mistake. When I look at the opposition, I have to say that I am fully convinced my grandchildren will suffer, but I will die soon. And it will be over. I can't hear the power and determination to resist the Putin's organization of the state. Yesterday, I heard that local governments are the hope of the Polish society. This is the local government that could not say no to Morawiecki because of coal. I'm worried every single day when I hear that Trzaskowski meets Morawiecki and there is no message about it. I would like to ask my colleagues, would we have accepted such behavior during the martial law if there were conversations? There was public conversation because it was obvious that our power lies in the ability to communicate and in telling the truth. Is Morawiecki really driven by the positive feelings of the Polish society? Previously, there was the other limit when non-Christians were entering. And how did Morawiecki behave and the others? Wasn't it Polish society? Yes, there was. How were the Polish citizens treated when they were helping the poor people whom we pushed out away from the border? Did the government respond? Let's not be naive. This government doesn't give a shit about the society. They try to build a totalitarian system which Adam remembers. His fury should be much stronger than the one I express now. The drama lies in the fact that because of helplessness, a part of the Polish society noticed that a window of being decent has opened. the pro-Ukrainians who were escaping towards the freedom, they were escaping the war. But that's not the way it is. Everybody I remember from protests about courts decided it was much better activity than standing in front of the courts. If the solidarity gene survived within 10%, Staniszewska wouldn't be standing with Frasyniuk at the courts. We, pensioners, have been standing in the streets since August 1980, and that's our failure. Adam, I feel you wanted to say something. Right, you're right. That's a failure, but also a success. The success is related to the fact that, contrary to other regions, this society is defending. It has been defending itself throughout the rule of the Law and Justice Coalition. We can see resistance in some places that we wouldn't expect. Lawyers, that was the group of servants during the communist times, and now they are flourishing, both lawyers, barristers, prosecutors. It seems very important to me. I have always considered that Putin's, Kaczynski's and Orban's successes was that they poisoned, intoxicated human brains and hearts. Both Putin, Kaczynski and Orban could hope for the real victory in election. And this is the success of the brainwash. But there is still strong resistance. And Trzaskowski won, but only a little. I'm far from being over-optimistic. But first we talked about people from Solidarity. Then the heroes from the Liberty Union. Will be taken responsible for not being able to win the war with people who cheat, who lie, who can't do anything, but still never has this model won in our place to such an extent to blame the West. We don't say that these are the French, the Germans to be blamed for the fact that Kaczynski has won. I agree with what Mirek and Grażyna said. Our opposition elites stand out with our decency. Ewa Kopacz said, we won't say that the election was falsified. This is what divides Poland. Those who use cynical rhetorics, but we Janusz mentioned the example of Starzyński. There is another thing worth considering. We often say that in the Russian society there is the gene of autocracy. It does not explain everything, but this is the factor worth considering. Hence the question, what historic gene do we have in our Polish DNA? Is it a gene of romantic uprisings or a gene of noble anarchy that led to partitions, or is it a gene of Galicia rebellion of 1936? And Wyspiański wrote that his grandfather was killed. Or is it the gene that is written in our traditions? Then the liberty and the first president murdered out of hatred our great writer Żeromski, then coup d'etat, yet then Piłsudski's dubious game with the parliament, Brest, imprisonment of Witos, who was fighting in a war with Bolsheviks. We've got a moment when we have to revise our history. It is even more important because we deal with the historical policy of the so-called positive change. These are the people who want to erase Lech Wałęsa from the history of solidarity. This is the achievement like the one of Stalin, who removed other leaders from photos. Shortly speaking, I am a bit more positive than Władek, but only a bit. And I think we've got all data as the society which decided to rebel, which doesn't want to be the servant of law and justice. And I don't know if Trzaskowski should meet Morawiecki or not. I don't know the context. You don't know the context either. Let's give up such attacks. Yesterday I was listening to Szymon Hołownia. I don't know whether it was simply populistic or just sharing his mindset. He said that we shouldn't bite one another. Only this way will we regain Poland, if we stand together. It is facilitator's dream not to have to ask questions and to let conversation go. It's like at home. I don't say a lot and the conversation is going, but ad rem, coming back to the essence, the moral compass, and Ukraine. I would like to come back to it. I will tell you an anecdote. I left the prison, and at my mom's home there was a note from Professor Goremek. Władek, remember not to comment anything before you meet me. I was flabbergasted. Martial law back then was different than nowadays, where you've got Facebook, TikToks, mobile phones. There was even no landline. After several months, I met Professor and I said, Bronek, I found the note. Right, you're absolutely right. Because in Western Europe there is a coalition of Ukrainians, Belarusians, Poles and they are redefining the history. They are looking for some common features, and they try to build the community. Barańczak wrote, it was not true that we didn't like Ukrainians because in Wrocław there is a young Ukrainian that people love them, and he's called Władysław Frasyniuk. Don't deny it. But let me finish. The difference between us is that I manage a company. We are about to face a crisis. I have to think how to make my stuff secure, and I have to make hard decisions. They are called cost reduction, or they are called downsizing, but it's simply about making people redundant, or perhaps one day I'll be able to re-employ them. But we don't have to be governed by illusions. How many of us were left? It was as always. Professor Dudek claims I exaggerated, and I said that it was from 3 to 5%, and he said it was around 300,000 people. Honestly speaking, I do remember that. I remember the elites, but our common court case is something that young people should remember. They had nothing against Michnik and nothing against Frasyniuk. They had Bogdan Lis, who was asked by Wałęsa to talk to government representatives and was recorded. The unfortunate tape was the element of accusing us. Were we furious? No, because we knew what he had been talking about, and Lech Wałęsa informed us about it. When Adam says, I don't know the context of the meeting, I don't know either, but I'm simply worried that the leader keeps silent about the meeting with Morawiecki. I'm worried that Polish representatives of local governments don't know the word no when it comes to coal. Experts say we'll miss 4 million tons of coal. Who'll be responsible for it? It would take long months to explain that the government is to blame. Who is our first point of contact? Mayors of cities. I don't understand this politics, soft politics. In our times, when you were soft, you had problems in prison. You have to be tough, you have to be strong. We've got a war for values in Poland, for democracy, for respect to another person. We've got racism. We've got imprisonment, like in a totalitarian regime. Communists were doing in a better way than the current government does. Such enchantments saying as, bite your tongue and wait for victory, I can't wait. The curse of my generation is the word hope. Today I hear the word hope reverberated. Perhaps the president will be decent. Hope. Perhaps the president's wife will behave in a decent way. She's a teacher. Hope. Perhaps will win the election. Hope. I'm waiting for somebody to do something for me. I don't rely on hope. In my opinion, the problem of contemporary Poland and the younger generation in politics is that we are victims of all rebellions that failed. When Frasyniuk says, don't be afraid, they say, no, we are the ones who are beaten and we are not the ones who beat. I don't pretend that it should be in a different way. There is war and you need to be tough.
Bardzo proszę.
Na wojnie trzeba być twardym.
You go to war, you have to be tough. But there is terminology, military terminology, that means friendly fire, that means your soldiers can kill you. It's better not to shoot at our people, even if they did something we didn't like. I do not want to continue talking about this theme. I would like to talk about a different theme, which in this situation should be addressed. We are talking about Poles, we were talking about Ukrainians. What about Russians? What about Belarusian Russians? What am I afraid of? I'm afraid of the relations between us, Russians and Ukrainians. Maybe the war will provide evil seeds, and later on it will be very hard to live, because Russians will not move to Madagascar, they will stay here. I'm really worried when I hear that we should ignore Russian culture. I know that Dostoevsky, when his attitude to Poles was not very good, the same about Pushkin, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't read Dostoevsky or listen to Tchaikovsky. So there is this moral problem, how to deal with Russians after the war, how to deal with the Belarusians who are behaving at least differently than Russians. So this is the problem we will have to face, and Ukrainians in particular, they will have to face it, and we will have to help them. We have to do it right now. We have to face the challenge already. So the topic which is very popular now is what Marta Lampert said recently. It's broadly commented. We can love Marta, but her behavior was not good. She was dividing. So we will have to face the word of forgiveness. So we will have to consider who we should forgive and what should be forgiven. I would like to address two themes. The second theme will refer Marta's behavior. But I would like to get back to the theme of hope. I'm not like Władek. I appreciate hope, I love hope, I was always hopeful, and it was always good for me. Władek, during the martial law, he was the icon of solidarity. Why? Because he was the beacon of hope. So if we lose hope, if you lose hope, you should start writing poems. So maybe Władek is right. Maybe Trzaskowski shouldn't meet with Morawiecki. Maybe he's right or not. I don't know the details, but I know it's not the war. Putin fights the war. You are right about Putin. He cannot win this war. Saying that Putin will win, it will be a loss to the world. We have to do anything to make sure that Putin will lose the war. If we talk about moral compass, I have a colleague, a journalist who is a lefty, and he thinks I'm a rotten Democrat, and he says, I had to tell him that my pacifism has to be, I have to get rid of it. We have to shoot to Putin. Janusz mentioned, and Mirek also mentioned it. We don't want Russophobia, nationalism. Solidarity used to be very patriotic, very national. The symbol of solidarity, is it me? Oh, it's not you, it's someone else who's calling you. Oh, this person who is calling me at this time of the night is not a serious person. Something in Russian, maybe it's KGB. What I mean is stirring Russophobia, hatred towards Russians who running away from the military army mobilization. Or maybe they did it for the convenience, for opportunism, but they didn't want to open fire to Ukrainians as the Russian army. They didn't want to take place in this dreadful aggression and invasion. So we mustn't tell them, fuck out. We have to help them the way it is possible. So people, those who are in the West, have media in our newspaper. We have this approach that the mainstream text published in independent Western media in Berlin, Riga, Vilnius, it should be translated and it should be shared through our newspaper to find out what they are thinking about Putin. Of course, we do not want to have anything in common with Putin supporters, because it's as if we were discussing with the Hitler that shooting people, murdering people in the streets is not the right thing, not the right behavior. At the beginning of the martial law, in the Mazowsze Weekly, there was an article published. My two colleagues wrote it, and they were writing whether we will be able to survive without hatred. And this is the question we should address today. Janusz is right. He scores bull's eye. Russians will not go to Madagascar, of course. Their future will be terrible. They will be threatened. And it's not a good idea to be Russian in Europe right now. But because we were minority and we had the power, we were at the right side, we were brave enough to be on the right side. I only wanted to remind you that we have invited audience to ask questions, and we only have 11 minutes. I do apologize that this panel is so short. So I will just conclude. Nationalism is poisoned. Any nationalism is poison. It makes people stupid. It teaches them to hate, not to think. So don't buy into this. Question time. So there are volunteers with mics. Little time has remained, so your questions will be short. Question to Adam. On Wednesday, there's the 5th anniversary of Szczęsny. Łódź Committee for Democracy Defense. We will be in Rubinstein Passage, and we will be remembering him. Question to Adam. Do you think that maybe we need some more Szczęsny to make sure that the Polish politics wakes up? And the second question is for Mr. Frasyniuk. Władek. In 1980 in Poland, we organized a public transport strike. You were organizing in Wrocław. I was organizing it in Łódź. Do you think how to to stimulate Poles to go out into the streets, and we will be leading them. And please keep to the topic of the panel with your questions. Szczęsny, his sacrifice will be always remembered by Poles, or they will actually the same as the sacrifice of Palach in the Czech Republic. It's the symbol of Poland that is being murdered or that has been murdered, or both. I fully respect Szczęsny's heroism. I took part in a meeting in Warsaw after his death. I wouldn't advise anyone to do this. This is a very heroic way, but we have to live and win, not to die. Suicide is something. My imagination is not wide enough, but I can imagine such situation if I do not kill myself, it will lead misfortune of many people. So it was an act of self-defense and defense of other people. But please remember, we have to live for Poland. Many people who felt insulted. We mustn't give Poland away to people who are irresponsible. Okay, I will answer the second question. I am speaking like this. I want to have all the leaders to communicate that there will be no joint list. Tusk, Czarzasty, Hołownia, Zamberg, they said that there won't be the joint list. To be honest, are we pretending? Do we pretend that we won't do this, that we will keep silent? Are we going to have the next term of office of the man who says that Polish universities should be like universities in the Middle Ages? So we are not taking the lead. A Dominican, Father Wiśniewski, I met him in Wrocław and he told me, come to the meeting. And I said, Ludwik, I'm not going with you because you will start a riot, the police will come, and again I will go to prison and I will be in prison like I used to be with Michnik. So it was a disease. It was the disease of youth. So we will not lead this rebellion. The only thing we can do, we can convince people about the values they should support publicly. We should convince people that it's not worth keeping silent. These two generations after World War II have left a simple last will. An elementary school student can learn it by heart. Don't be afraid. Don't be neutral. It's not enough. The history of solidarity showed don't be afraid. And then we can hope for success. It's a very important debate we are having. We are talking about all these threats, about these nationalisms. Are we able to be the voice of this solidarity and start the debate with Belarusians, Ukrainians, Russians, led by Jarosław Kaczyński? No, that's why I don't want to take part in an empty discussion. I want to say this is our duty towards Ukrainians. That is why you, the leaders, you have to, just like we did in 1989, you have to have the joint list, because only then we will be able to win. Next question. My compass, Janusz, Committee for Defense of Democracy. My compass is bombarded with information from Ukraine. I'm coping with this, but there is one place where I cannot cope. Adam has responded, has addressed this issue. But I would like the others to respond. How the democratic societies and states should behave towards these Russians that are fleeing from Russia to run away from the mobilization to the army. So how should we react? I agree with Adam. Any escape is a good idea in such situations. The fewer people are sent to fight in Ukraine, the less bloody this war will be. Fewer Ukrainians will be killed, fewer buildings, cities will be destroyed. So this is a good thing. I wouldn't like them to go back to Russia to join the army to fight. What for? What's the reason? It will be easier if they do not come back. You have to also be aware that under the first wave they are sending prisoners to the war. Prisoners who are subject to amnesty. And the professional military units follow them. So if the first lines will try to run away, the professional units will be shooting at them. Well, I would like to remind the first resolution of the First Congress of Solidarity, the message to European states. We have no doubts. For our generation, it's rather obvious. So this is the phenomenon of the Polish solidarity. It's not the hatred, it's not the revenge, it's the future. There is time only for one short question. Good evening, Committee for Democracy Defense. The topic of the panel is the moral compass. And as we know, recently in Poland we were saying that the depository of such compass is the Catholic Church. So I wanted to ask you whether Adam Michnik has changed his opinion on the vision of the role of the Church, especially in the context of Ukraine, or whether do you maintain your previous, earlier opinion? When I was coming here, a lady stopped me and said, please, in this Gazeta Wyborcza, please stop attacking Catholic Church. So I was a bit surprised, because in my company, in my editor's office, they call me a minister of Father Rydzyk. So I think in the following way, Church goes through probably the deepest crisis after the Reformation. This crisis is very intense. You can see it in every area of Church's activity. So this is the first part of my answer. Secondly, this relationship of hierarchs, of bishops, and the Law and Justice Party. And it makes people like me afraid. So this is what we're criticizing. Thirdly, all these scandals in terms of finance, in terms of life-related problems, we must write about it. This is true. And the last aspect, we are dealing with the situation. We live in the joint community home, so if there is a local rejection of everything that is eclectic and Catholic, it's unreasonable. So it's like having a cold civil war. So we have to learn how to live based on the equal, credible conditions. So our time is up. I promised that I will finish on time. So I wanted to thank you very cordially. So the last question. It's not the question, it's an appeal and a very strong request to Władysław. You are very strong and energetic and a tough man. Please stand as a leader and take these people and lead these people to victory. And what now? Thank you very much. Lead who? Thank you very much to our guests. I am sorry that I didn't manage my speakers, but the special services of communist era didn't manage to govern them, so it's not surprising. I haven't managed either.
It's not always easy to recognize. It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it and how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people, but for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together.
Ihre Ausreise.
Atlas Network is, as the name suggests, a network, and it's global. We work all around the world. We're based in the U.S. We have about 159 partners in the United States right now. and the bulk of our partners are outside, nearly 500 in total.
Atlas Network, it connects people from all over the world defending the idea of human dignity, defending human rights and personal liberties.
Atlas Network is focusing on, I think, the most important and moral cause in the entire world.
We partner with local innovators, local leaders who understand conditions on the ground in communities facing real challenges. We look at the people from the worldwide freedom movement that are passionate, are ready to make a difference, understand local conditions, and we invest in them.
At Atlas Network, we unleash individual ingenuity to enrich humanity.
The United States does not have a lock on the idea of freedom and liberty. Those ideas are beyond borders.
One of the main goals of Atlas Network is to eradicate poverty around the world, and we do that by investing millions of dollars in our partners' work every year.
Historically, wealthy nations around the world have tried to help low-income countries develop. The way we've been doing it traditionally has not really been working. So there's a movement to do development differently, and that means we need to step back as outsiders and rethink the role that we're playing in helping people in low-income countries achieve their dreams.
We want to make the world a better place. We want to make the world a freer world.
All of us want to leave a legacy and be part of something big to make a better world. This is exactly the work of Atlas Network.
With our growing number of hundreds of successful partners, we're stronger than ever.
Changing the world.
Changing the world.
Changing the world
starts together with us.